The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, you'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
Hello folks, welcome to 2025. We're here at last. Year number 5 is underway. Now we'll be seeing a lot of this particular county that I'm stood in this year. This is Leicestershire, and it's a brand new part of Leicestershire for you as well. This is Melton, and we're beginning in the village of Edmonthorpe, which is in the parish of Wymondham. Wymondham, Wigman's homestead. Hello everybody, welcome to 2025 on TVI. This year we're going to be spending a lot of time here in Leicestershire. There will be at least 3 new districts in this county on the channel this year, and this is one of them. Welcome to Melton for the very first time. Kicking things off in an area famed for Stilton cheese and pork pies, we have Wymondham. Now be careful how you pronounce that. The pronunciation kind of helps in a way because thanks to it, you shouldn't be confusing this with another place of a similar name in Norfolk. We will be going there too eventually though. The Leicestershire version is part of a parish which covers a second village, Edmonthorpe, just to the south. The biggest and most well-known attraction here is its windmill. Built to grind corn, the mill has now been converted into a visitor attraction with a tea room and craft shops. Between that and the main village cluster is an old railway line and station, and the village itself is famous for being the home of Frances Paulet. It's said that Paulet was responsible for the shape and style of Stilton cheese. We'll be seeing her house on the main walk. Elsewhere there's a pub called the Berkeley Arms, which is a reference to the former Lords of the Manor. There's also an antique dealer's and a wine shop too. The church is pretty as well, and if you're a football fan, you'll be interested to know it's the building where former Manchester United man Michael Carrick got married in 2007. So there's lots to see and learn about. Let's go. We start with the village of Edmonthorpe, which sits just to the south of Wymondham, close to the border with Rutland. This here is an old school. You'll be sick of the sight of old school buildings by the end of this episode. There's at least 4 to talk about, plus a modern school as well. At this school, attendance was never massive. Indeed, children were taught in a single room. In the 1960s, just 14 pupils were on roll. It's not a school any longer. It closed in 1966, and today it's the Edmonthorpe Social Club. In front of the building is a water pump. Made of wrought iron and obelisk shaped, this was built in 1856 and it used to supply the place with water. It's believed to be the only one of its type in the country with its dragon-shaped spout and curved handle. Look closely at its markings and you'll see the initials WAP. WAP stands for William Ann Pochin. Once the High Sheriff of Leicestershire, he once lived at Edmonthorpe Hall and is credited with improving lots of local properties. This is Edmonthorpe's church dedicated to St Michael and All Angels. It's redundant and it's under the care of the church's Conservation Trust. The tower and the chancel date from the 13th century. Aisles were added during the 14th, and in the 15th the clerestory was built. Alterations were carried out during the 19th century, including re-roofing the north aisle in 1858, installing a new clock in 1860, and a full restoration in 1862. Parts of the church are constructed in ironstone and others in limestone. The tower is in 3 stages, separated by string courses with angled buttresses on the western side. Inside there are monuments to members of the Smith family. Good name. They lived at Edmonthorpe Hall. The largest of the monuments, dated 1655, is to Sir Roger Smith and his 2 wives, his son and his grandson. There's also a Baroque monument in marble and slate to Sir Edward Smith, who died in 1707, among others. Outside, the churchyard contains the war graves of 2 soldiers who fell in World War I. Now, one Smith family member is at the centre of a local legend. Supposedly, Lady Anne Smith was a witch and could turn herself into a cat. Whilst in her feline mode, her paw was wounded by her butler, who had gone for her with a meat cleaver after catching her trying to steal food. The injury remained on her hand after becoming human again, and it's said the effigy of her in this very church has a mark in its alabaster that represents it. It's carved into her wrist. Tradition says that periodically it bleeds. Well, how about that for the first bit of folklore in 2025? Does it actually bleed? I wonder. It might just be a case of, raindrops dripping from the roof or something and just making the alabaster sort of drip, I suppose. But yeah, it's a fascinating tale, isn't it? A bleeding wrist here in the church in Edmundthorpe. Let's head across to Wymondham now, which isn't too far away. And on the drive between the two, we'll talk a little bit more about Edmundthorpe and a few of the other bits and bobs which I found out about it. Let's drive into Wymondham now, and as we do, I'll fill in a bit more about Edmundthorpe. The village is a former civil parish, but it was combined with Wymondham in 1936. It has Danish origins. The name Edmundthorpe is derived from a corrupted form of the Old English personal name, Eadmer. As well as the Smiths, there are several other families that have lived in Edmundthorpe over many centuries. These include the Vaseys and the Extons, and these are detailed in census transcripts for the village. That fact will please all my genealogist followers. During World War II, Edmundthorpe Hall, which was built by Sir Roger Smith in 1621, was used as a military fuel depot for a short time. It was eventually destroyed by fire in the early hours of the 10th of February 1942. This was due to the unsafe handling of hot ashes from a coal fire. The 19th century stable block does, however, remain. It was designed by R.W. Johnson in 1869 and was used to accommodate both Italian and German prisoners of war until 1947. It acted as a satellite to Allington Camp near Grantham. Edmundthorpe also sits on an embanked section of the disused Melton to Oakham Canal. That lies to the west of the village and loops under the road between Edmundthorpe and Tea in Rutland. We'll be seeing that canal in the future. Okay, so here we are then in Wymondham. Should take me about an hour and 20-ish, something like that, to walk around this. It's a fair-sized village, this, and there's a lot to talk about as well. There's quite a few landmarks that pertain to schools, both old and new. You'll probably be sick of the sight of them by the time we've done with this episode. So here we are in Wymondham. Let's start with a bit of history going back to the 1200s. The manor at that time was held by the Hamlin or Hamelin family. The south transept of the church here once had a chantry chapel that was founded by William Hamelin in 1290. He gave land in Wymondham, Saxby and Thorpe Edmer for a chaplain to celebrate Mass in perpetuity on his behalf. By 1553, the chantry was no longer in existence, possibly as a result of the Reformation. Sir John Hamelin's coat of arms was one of many in the family, but it was his that was eventually transmitted to the Hamlin baronets. An effigy of Sir John Hamelin can be found in the church. Sir John's daughter and heiress, Isabel, carried the manor to her husband, Sir Thomas Berkeley, and thus the name Berkeley became associated with Wymondham. Sir Thomas Berkeley was a lawyer and a politician who represented Leicestershire in Parliament. He also served as the High Sheriff for Rutland, Warwickshire, and of course, Leicestershire too. Now that we've understood a bit about the village's heritage and backstory, a lot of the landmarks here will make more sense. Let's start with the church. 13th century in origin, this is built in the early English style, although the third story of the tower and the spire are perpendicular. In 2007, this very church saw the wedding of former Manchester United footballer Michael Carrick to Lisa Ruffhead. There are some unusual features in this one. For a start, there's a blocked-up door in the north wall, and in the north aisle there are 3 carved roof corbels with figures to remind worshippers of the torments of hell. The eastern one shows a man being eaten headfirst by some sort of ravenous beast. Lovely. There were a series of Victorian restorations between 1864 and 1875. One of them was carried out by Goddard and Son on the chancel in 1867. The east window by Slater was added at that time. Next to the church, St Peter's Reading Room was originally a free grammar school. The Reading Room was established in 1883 when the grammar school moved to its new premises on the outskirts of the village. The building housed a snooker club until 1999, when the premises were pronounced unsafe. Well, that's one school down, but there's still plenty more to come. Next, we're going to head towards the village hall, just a bit further down this road. Opened in 1928, the village hall has a well-equipped kitchen and a large stage. It hosts a doctor's surgery 3 times a week, as well as other village functions such as church bazaars, dances and an annual pantomime. All good. Now, Church Lane was previously called School Lane. Records show that this was certainly still the case as late as 1905. It's unclear whether or not School Lane was a reference to the grammar school or to this building instead. This is next to the village hall and was originally built as a Wesleyan Chapel. It was purchased in 1854 to become a day school for girls and later became a national school. Afterwards, until 1968 no less, this was a C of E primary school. Now, Wymondham still has a modern school. We're off to see where that is next, but to do so we've got to walk a long way to the other end of the village. To get there, we have to pass down Chapel Lane, and true to its name, there's another old chapel down here. This was the Wymondham Independent Chapel, and it was built in 1840. It cost £800 to construct. Built at the same time as this, there was a minister's house, and by 1846 a girls' school was described as being attached to this chapel building. In the 1850s, this chapel was seeing congregations of up to 130 people, whilst the school averaged an attendance of 50. According to Wymondham's excellent village website, the chapel went out of use in 1959, and as you can see, not a lot has been done with it since then. Now, there's 2 excellent bits of history here. Let me show you. First of all, on the left there you can see the former Bursnell's bootmakers, and this here is Bursnell's Lane. Of course, that is now a private house. There's no boots being made there anymore. But on the end of Bursnell's Lane here, you can see there's a blue plaque on this house there. And that blue plaque says that it's believed, nobody knows for sure, but it's believed that it's in that very cottage where Stilton cheese was first produced. We'll be talking a bit more about Stilton cheese when we get back to the other end of the village. Now we're at the John Sedley Community Centre. This was built in 1970 and it's supported by the Sir John Sedley Educational Foundation. It has financial support from the Education Department of Leicestershire County Council, who employ a premises officer to look after the building. The centre is run by a management committee consisting of the premises officer, 2 trustees, a caretaker and any parishioners should they wish to serve. Various local groups are affiliated to the centre and meet here regularly. So who was Sir John Sedley? Well, in 1637, he was the guy who founded the free grammar school to help support the educational needs of the children within the parish. Upon his death, he bequeathed £400 to his wife, Elizabeth, which was then invested into land to generate an income, thus supporting the master of the school. Now this here is the modern school, which has since taken over from the 3 old schools we've already met. St Peter's Primary School, or Wymondham C of E as it's now known, opened at the western end of the village in 1968, replacing the one on Church Lane, or School Lane if you will. Its catchment area includes several local villages. Okay, as far as the route goes, it's very simple now. We just need to walk straight back down the main street to where it meets Edmundthorpe Road, where the last landmark will be. That's Stilton Cheese related, by the way. Now on the way, there's loads to see. There's a pub called the Berkeley Arms. There's a couple of chapels. There's a wine shop. There's all sorts. Let's go and see them. We've got one final chapel to have a look at. This was Wymondham's other Wesleyan Methodist chapel, which was built of brick in 1891. Until 1931, it provided 120 sittings. There was also a schoolroom at one time. Relatively little else is known about this one, so let's move on to the local pub, the Berkeley Arms. The 300-year association of 11 generations of the Berkeley family as Wymondham's landowners ended in the early 17th century, but the connection is still reflected in the name of this pub. It was previously called the Angel Inn. Following the closure of the former Hunter's Arms in 1997, the Berkeley is now the only public house in the village. It was completely refurbished by pubmaster during the autumn of 1999, but it still remains a picturesque 16th century pub. It's also won some awards in recent times. The menu, which changes regularly, offers a great choice. The fresh, locally sourced ingredients are cooked to order and are complemented by a fine selection of wines and spirits. Now, with this being a new district for the channel, that means there's bound to be some people out there who've never seen me before. Hello people. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you very much, I appreciate that. Now what I do when I visit a place is I leave one of these cards on the parish notice board, and there's a notice board right next to the Berkeley Arms, so you know what that means? There we go, 1 down out of 26 here in Melton. If a glass of wine from the pub isn't what you're after, you can always visit Frenchvines. This is a small wine shop run by Nathan Sapire. It was established in 2005 and sells a collection of beautiful, unique wines and champagnes from the independent French wine grower Vigneron. Vigneron managed the wine creation process from beginning to end. This means farming their own vineyard, harvesting their own grapes, and then aging and bottling their own wines. In 2018, Sapire presented a selection from his eclectic range to the Oxford Guild of Sommeliers, which was warmly received. finally, we come to Edmundthorpe Road, and there can be no question as to the most important landmark on this street. Formerly the Hunter's Arms Hotel, this is number 4, which these days is a private house. Before being a hotel though, it was already a residence. This was the home of Francis Paulet from 1742 to 1797. Paulet was a skilled cheesemaker by trade and has traditionally been credited as the person who crafted Stilton cheese's modern shape and style in the 1720s. Paulet supplied her brother-in-law, who was the landlord of the Bell Inn at Stilton itself on the former route of the A1. The cheese was once made in the village, but during World War II production stopped and never reappeared. The house had previously been occupied by her great-grandfather, Henry Thorne, and Edmundthorpe Road was known then as Thorne Lane. Frances Paulet lived to the age of 88, outliving all but one of her potential beneficiaries. There's potentially a good reason for that longevity. There's a 19th century Wymondham saying which goes like this: "Drink a pot of ale and eat a scoop of Stilton every day, and you will make old bones." Okay, we have made it all the way around Wymondham, although we're not quite finished with this one just yet, because there are 2 major landmarks we've yet to see. One of them is the old railway station, and the other one is the pièce de résistance as far as this Leicestershire village goes, and that of course is the Windmill. They're both to the north, so let's go there. North of the village is the route of an old railway line and a former station to go with it. This was part of the Midland and Great Northern Joint Railway branch line between Saxby and Bourne, and it was served by Edmundthorpe and Wymondham Station. The station closed to passengers in 1959, though the line did remain open for ironstone freight. Queen Elizabeth II is known to have made a journey along it in 1967, and the route was also used for holiday trips from Leicester to Skegness. The former goods yard, goods shed, station, station house and navvy's cottage are all passed when travelling from the village along Butt Lane. The Pines is a private residence converted from the former railway station offices. And lastly, we have Wymondham Windmill, without a doubt the best landmark the village possesses. The windmill is made of ironstone, but it's topped with brick and an OG cap and fantail. It's 5 stories tall and was built in 1813, originally with 6 sails. It ceased grinding corn in 1952, but it was then powered by an engine, continuing with cattle feed until 1960. Partially restored and providing a superb view of the village and surrounding countryside, the windmill is now a tourist attraction. Together with a tea room which opened in 1990 and 6 craft workshops, there's a gallery where you'll find sketches of the windmill by Steve Wallhead and David Millard. It's one of only 4 6-sailed windmills remaining in the country, and it's now a Grade 2 listed building. Credit for some of its restoration has to go to Nigel Moon, a miller himself and the owner of a similar building at Wysondine. It was Nigel who rebuilt the cap of this mill in 1985. Incidentally, he's now also lovingly restored his own mill with the help of English Heritage. Wysondine still sells flour, and you can buy that here too at Wymondham's tea rooms. And with the mill visited, we're off to the north to find the next one here in Melton. That's been quite a good start to begin 2025, hasn't it? Tomorrow we're off to a parish with 2 villages and a very little known racecourse. I'll see you there. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.